Admiral Taeyang stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars drift past the viewport. He was tired, 53 years old, 20 years in space, and most of that time spent protecting cargo ships and mining colonies from pirates. Nothing glorious. Nothing worth remembering. Just another day in humanity's small corner of the galaxy. The message came at 0300 hours. His communications officer, a young woman named Hana, called him back to the bridge with an urgency he rarely heard in her voice. When he arrived, she was pale and staring at her screen like it might bite her. "Sir, you need to see this," she said. Taeyang leaned over her shoulder. The transmission was old. Not just old, but ancient. The computer estimated it had been traveling through space for 50,000 years. It was coded in a language that made no sense at first, until the translation algorithms caught up. Then Taeyang saw words he recognized: proto-human, the language his ancestors might have spoken when they lived in caves. "Play it," he ordered. The message crackled to life. A voice spoke, gentle and sad. "Children of Earth, if you hear this, then our time has ended. We are the Ahnari. Long ago, we came to your world. We gave you 3 gifts: the secret of fire, the symbols for writing, and the mind to reach the stars. We asked only one thing in return. If we ever called, you would answer. The debt is now called. The Vrin have come. We are at the coordinates below. Please, remember us." The bridge fell silent. Taeyang read the message twice more. 50,000 years. Could it be real? He looked at his crew. Some seemed excited. Others looked confused. His second officer, Captain Minho, shook his head slowly. "It has to be a fake," Minho said. "Some kind of elaborate hoax," but Taeyang felt something in his chest. A pull. A need to know. 3 days later, Dr. Nari arrived on his ship. She was a xenoarchaeologist from Mars, young and brilliant, with eyes that burned with curiosity. She brought data files, ancient artifacts, and a theory that changed everything. "The Ahnari were real," she explained in the briefing room. "We found their markings in caves across Earth. Turkey, France, Indonesia, Korea. Always the same symbols. Fire, writing, stars. We thought they were myths. Gods our ancestors invented. But this message proves they existed." "And you think we owe them?" Minho asked, skepticism heavy in his voice. Nari nodded. "They gave us everything. Language, technology, the cognitive ability to create civilization. Without them, we would still be hunting animals with rocks. If they are calling for help, we have to answer." Taeyang sent the message to Earth Command. Their response came back within hours. Negative. Do not investigate. The coordinates pointed to the forbidden sectors, regions of space where the Galactic Council had banned all travel. Entire civilizations had vanished there. The Council believed the Ahnari were extinct, and that chasing ghosts would only lead to disaster. But Taeyang could not let it go. That night, he sat alone in his quarters, staring at the message. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that a promise was sacred, that a man's word was all he truly owned. Could humanity ignore a debt 50,000 years old? He called a meeting of his senior officers. Hana was there, eager and ready. Minho attended reluctantly. Engineer Mireille came too, a practical woman who usually avoided drama. Taeyang laid out the situation simply. "The Council says no. Earth Command says no. But I believe we owe the Ahnari our answer. I am taking a volunteer fleet to those coordinates. Anyone who wants to come can join me. Anyone who wants to stay will face no judgment." Minho stood. "This is insane. We will lose our commissions, our reputations, maybe our lives." "I know," Taeyang said quietly. "But I cannot live knowing we ignored a call for help from the species that made us human." The room was silent for a long moment. Then, Hana stood. "I will go." Mireille sighed and stood. Someone has to keep the ships running. One by one. Others stood. Even Minho. Shaking his head but unable to abandon his friend. Word spread through the fleet. Within 2 days, 50 ships had volunteered. Veterans, explorers, scientists, and idealists. They called themselves the Debt Keepers. The Galactic Council was furious. Ambassadors from a dozen species called Taiyang a reckless fool. The Verlixian ambassador, a tall insectoid being, warned him directly. You violate 12 treaties. You risk war. Turn back now. Taiyang refused. On the day of departure, Earth's media called them criminals. Protesters gathered at space stations, demanding they be stopped, but others lined the viewing platforms, holding signs that read, "Honor the debt," and "A promise is forever." Taeyang stood on his bridge as the fleet prepared to jump. Dr. Nari stood beside him, clutching her datapad like a lifeline. Minho checked coordinates one last time. Hana sat at the helm, fingers dancing over controls. All ships report ready, sir, Minho said. Taeyang took a breath. He thought of his grandfather. He thought of ancient humans learning to write for the first time, their faces full of wonder. He thought of the Anari, waiting in the dark. Jump, he ordered. Space twisted. The stars stretched into lines, and 50 human ships vanished from civilized space, heading toward a sector where entire civilizations had gone to die. Behind them, the galaxy watched and whispered. Some called them heroes. Others called them fools. But Taeyang did not care. He had made his choice. Humanity would honor its debt, no matter the cost. The jump took 3 days. When the fleet emerged, Taeyang felt his breath catch. Before them hung a planet that should have been beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, 2 small moons. But something was terribly wrong. The cities were glass. Massive towers melted and frozen in their death throes. Orbital stations hung in pieces, their metal frames twisted like broken bones. Scanner readings showed no life signs on the surface. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Scan for survivors, Taeyang ordered, his voice tight. For 6 hours, the fleet searched. They found only graves. Millions of graves. Dr. Nari wept silently as she analyzed the ruins. The Anari civilization had been magnificent. Art covered every building. Gardens had once filled every street. This had been a society that valued beauty above all else. Then Hana detected something. Deep underground, energy signatures, and faint life signs. Taeyang took a landing party down. Minho came with him, along with 20 Marines and Dr. Nari. They found an entrance hidden beneath rubble, a massive door marked with the same symbols from Earth's ancient caves. Fire, writing, stars. The door opened to their touch. Inside, lights flickered on, weak but functional. They descended into tunnels that went deep into the planet's crust. The walls were covered in paintings. Nari stopped at each one, tears streaming down her face. Look, she whispered. This one shows Earth, and these are humans, our ancestors. Taeyang saw paintings of ancient humans sitting around fires, while tall, graceful beings taught them to shape symbols in the dirt. The Anari looked almost human but taller, with larger eyes and longer fingers. Their faces were kind. At the end of the tunnel, they found them. 3,000 Anari, living in a vast underground chamber. They were thin and haunted, their elegant clothing worn to threads. When they saw the humans, some fell to their knees. Others simply stared in disbelief. An elder approached. She was ancient, her silvery skin marked with lines of sorrow. She touched Taeyang's face gently, tears falling from her large eyes. You came, she said in perfect English. After so long, you remembered. We honor our debts. Taeyang replied. Taeyang replied. Taeyang replied. Taeyang replied. The elder's name was Kalith. She took them to a central hall, where the last Anari gathered. There, she told them the story that broke Taeyang's heart. 50 years ago, the Vryn had come. They were a hive mind, a species that consumed others to expand their collective consciousness. The Anari had no weapons. They had evolved beyond war 10,000 years before. They believed in peace, in art, in uplifting younger species across the galaxy. They had defensive shields, but nothing more. The Vryn did not want their planet. They wanted the Anari themselves, their brains. The Anari neural tissue was perfect for enhancing the Vryn hive processors. So the Vryn harvested them. Billions died. The survivors fled underground and sent their final message into space, hoping their children would remember. We uplifted 47 species, Caliph said. We gave gifts to each. But you were our last hope. The only ones we gave the warrior's gift to. We made you strong where we were weak. Dr. Nari asked the question they all wondered. Caliph smiled sadly. Because you were survivors. Every other species we found had already learned peace. But your ancestors fought every day just to live. We saw that strength. We enhanced it. We hoped that one day, if we needed protection, you would remember us. Taeyang felt the weight of that hope crush down on him. 3,000 survivors out of billions. And they had waited 50 years for help that might never come. We will evacuate you, he said. All of you. Today, the evacuation began immediately. The Anari had little to carry. Most of their possessions had been lost. But they brought their art, their records, and their hope. Hana helped a young Anari named Rael onto her ship. The boy had never seen the sky. When they emerged from underground, he stared at the stars and cried. They had evacuated 2,000 Anari when the Vryn arrived. 20 massive ships dropped from warp space. They were nightmares made real. Biomechanical monstrosities, ships grown from living metal and flesh. They pulsed with organic light. And their hulls writhed with what looked like veins. Battle stations, Taeyang shouted. The human fleet formed up, 50 ships against 20. The odds seemed good, until sensors revealed the truth. Each Vryn ship was 10 times larger than anything humanity had. They bristled with weapons that grew from their hulls like tumors. The Vryn sent a message. It was not a voice, but a chorus of thousands speaking as one. Return the Anari. Leave. Live. We. Taeyang's response was simple. No. The battle began. The Vryn weapons were biological, firing what looked like living projectiles that ate through shields and armor. Human ships exploded. The Valor went first, then the Dawn's Hope, then the Perseverance. Good ships with good crews, gone in seconds. But humans learned fast. Minho discovered that the bioweapons could be burned away with focused plasma fire. Mireille rerouted power to create denser shield harmonics. Hana flew like a demon, her fighter dodging between capital ships to target weapon clusters. Still, they were losing. 15 ships gone. 20 more damaged. The Vryn pressed their advantage, moving to surround the fleet. Taeyang made a decision. Open a wormhole. All ships prepare to jump. Quote, Sir, we still have 1,000 Anari on the surface, Minho protested. Then we load them faster. Every transport dropped to the surface. Marines and crew worked desperately, carrying Anari onto ships even as Vryn weapons rained down from orbit. 3 more ships died, buying them time. But they got everyone. All 3,000 Anari made it off the planet. The wormhole opened, a swirling tear in space. The human fleet limped through it, damaged and bleeding. As the last ship crossed, the Vryn sent one final message. We will come for Earth. Surrender the Anari, or your world will burn like theirs. Then the wormhole collapsed, and they were safe. For now. The fleet emerged near human space 3 days later. They had saved the Anari. But the cost was high. 1,500 humans dead, 35 ships destroyed, or too damaged to repair. And now the Vryn knew about Earth. Taeyang sat in his quarters, staring at casualty reports. A knock came at his door. Kalith entered, her face heavy with guilt. "I am sorry," she said. "We brought this on you." Taeyang shook his head. "No. We chose this. And we would choose it again." "Why?" she asked. "We are strangers to you now." Taeyang thought of his grandfather's words. "Because a promise is sacred. Because debt matters. Because if we abandon you, we abandon ourselves." Kalith touched his hand. "Then we will face what comes together." The fleet returned to Earth orbit to find warships waiting. Commander Daehyun stood on the view screen, his face cold with anger. "Admiral Taeyang, you are charged with violating 17 treaties, unauthorized military action, and endangering Earth. Surrender immediately." Taeyang stood his ground. "We saved 3,000 innocent lives. That is not a crime. You started a war." Daehyun snapped. "The Vryn have sent messages to the Galactic Council. They demand we hand over the Anari or face annihilation. Do you understand what you have done?" "Drively, I understand that we kept a promise," Taeyang replied, calmly. The standoff lasted 3 hours. Finally, Earth's President Sola intervened. She was a practical woman, known for making hard choices. She ordered Daehyun to stand down and called for a global referendum. Let humanity decide. Should they protect the Ahnari or surrender them to save themselves? The debate tore Earth apart. Protesters filled the streets of every major city. Half demanded the Anari be handed over. "We did not ask for this," they shouted. "Why should we die for aliens?" The other half rallied behind Taeyang. They carried signs reading, "Honor the debt," and "A promise is forever." Dr. Nari appeared on every news channel, pleading humanity's case. She showed the cave paintings. She explained what the Anari had given them. "Without them, we would still be in the Stone Age," she argued. "They gave us civilization. Can we really abandon them now?" But fear was a powerful thing. Many people believed the Vryn could not be stopped. Better to sacrifice 3,000 aliens than risk billions of humans. During this chaos, Nari made a discovery. She was studying the Anari genetic data, trying to understand exactly what they had done to humanity 50,000 years ago. What she found shocked her. The Anari had not just enhanced human intelligence, they had given humanity something called adaptive aggression syndrome. It was a genetic modification that turned stress and fear into tactical clarity. When humans faced danger, their minds did not freeze. They adapted. They found solutions. They became more dangerous the more desperate the situation. "They turned us into warriors," Nari explained to Taeyang. "Not mindless fighters. Strategic survivors. They gave us the ability to face impossible odds and find a way through." Taeyang understood. The Ahnari had been pacifists who knew their nature would one day doom them, so they created protectors. Not just humanity, but dozens of species across the galaxy, each given different gifts, each bound by the same debt. That night, Nari did something bold. She accessed the Anari data cores and found the complete list of uplifted species. 47 civilizations, scattered across the galaxy. Some were advanced, others were primitive. But all had received gifts from the Anari. All owed the same debt. She broadcast the ancient call. It was a simple message in languages long forgotten, transmitted across every channel she could access. The Anari called. "Will you answer?" For 3 days, nothing happened. Then the first response came. The Kalathi, a reptilian species from the Outer Rim, sent a message. "We remember. We come." Then another. The Therion, an aquatic civilization. "The debt is ours." We answer. One by one, 34 species responded. Some had been uplifted 10,000 years ago. Others only 5,000. But all of them remembered what the Anari had done. All of them felt the weight of the debt. Ships began arriving at Earth. Strange vessels from species humanity had never met. Some were advanced, sleek warships with weapons humanity could barely understand. Others were primitive, fusion-powered cruisers held together with hope. But they all came. The Galactic Council panicked. This was unprecedented. Dozens of minor species forming an alliance outside Council control. They sent ambassadors, trying to negotiate. The Verlixian ambassador arrived personally, his insectoid features clicking with agitation. "You cannot win," he told President Sola. "The Vrin have destroyed civilizations far stronger than yours. Surrender the Ahnari. Live." Sola's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "We are not surrendering anyone. If the Vrin want war, they will get one." Preparations began. General Wubin took command of the combined fleet. He was an old soldier, scarred and brilliant, who had fought in every major conflict for 30 years. He looked at the gathered forces and shook his head. "We have 2,000 ships," he said. "Intelligence says the Vreen will bring 10,000. We are badly outmatched. By Alti, we have 2,000 ships. We have 2,000 ships." But he did not give up. Instead, he began training. Human tactics merged with alien technologies. The Kalathi taught humanity about shield harmonics. The Therian shared advanced targeting systems. Each species brought their strengths to the table. Mireille worked 20-hour days reverse engineering Ahnari technology. She discovered their defensive shields could be adapted to human ships, creating barriers that bent energy weapons around them instead of absorbing them. Minho led Black Ops missions into neutral space, stealing Vrine intelligence. He learned that the Vrine hive mind had a weakness. Their communication network had lag time. If you separated their ships far enough, they struggled to coordinate. Meanwhile, the Anari settled on Earth's moon, in a colony built specifically for them. Kalith walked the gardens there with Nari, teaching her about Anari history. Rael, the young Anari, spent his days with Hana, learning about human culture and staring at Earth with wonder. "Why do you fight for us?" Rael asked one day. "You barely know us." Hana smiled. "Because it is the right thing to do. And because you gave us the stars." The referendum results came in. 63% of humanity voted to protect the Ahnari. Not an overwhelming majority, but enough. President Sola addressed the planet. "We are not a perfect species," she said. "We are violent and stubborn and often foolish, but we keep our promises. That is what makes us human. The Vrin are coming, and when they arrive, they will learn what it means to threaten Earth." 3 days later, long-range sensors detected the Vrin fleet. 10,000 ships dropping from warp space at the edge of the solar system. They moved slowly, deliberately, a wall of biomechanical horror advancing toward Earth. The Vrin sent their ultimatum. 72 hours. Surrender or die. The combined fleet moved into position. 2,000 ships against 10,000. Soldiers across 100 species prepared for battle. Some prayed to gods. Humanity did not know. Others sharpened weapons or checked systems one last time. Taeyang stood on his bridge, the horizon's edge repaired and ready. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. Hana at the helm. Minho at tactical. Mireille in engineering. All of them ready. He thought about his grandfather's words. "A promise is sacred. A debt must be paid." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "In 3 days, we face an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations. They expect us to run, to surrender, to beg for mercy. But we are not here to beg. We are here because we keep our promises. We are here because the Anari called, and we answered. Whatever happens, know this. We fight for something greater than ourselves. We fight for honor, for family, for the future. Across 2,000 ships, crews cheered. Humanity and her allies stood ready. The Vryn came on, unstoppable as a tide. But Taeyang smiled grimly. They had no idea what they were about to face. The battle began at dawn, though in space there was no true dawn. The Vryn fleet advanced in perfect formation, 10,000 ships moving as one mind. They were confident. Why would they not be? They had crushed 100 civilizations. What were 2,000 ships to them? General Wubin stood in the command center on Earth's moon, coordinating the defense. Around him, holographic displays showed the battlefield. He watched the Vryn approach and felt cold certainty settle in his gut. This would be the hardest fight of his life. All ships, engage on my mark, he ordered. The combined fleet opened fire. 2,000 ships unleashing everything they had. Missiles, plasma cannons, railguns, energy beams. The space between fleets lit up like a second sun. The Vryn shields held. Their biomechanical hulls absorbed damage that should have destroyed them. They returned fire with their living weapons, projectiles that moved like swimming creatures, homing on targets with terrible accuracy. The first ship to die was the Kalathi cruiser Strength of Stone. A Vryn weapon punched through its shields and ate through the hull like acid. 200 Kalathi died in seconds. Then a human destroyer, the Defiant, exploded as 3 Vryn ships focused fire on it. The battle became chaos. Ships twisted and burned. The Vryn pressed forward, their formation never breaking. They fought as one perfect organism, anticipating every move, covering every weakness. In the first 12 hours, the Allied fleet lost 400 ships. Humanity and her allies were dying, and the Vryn had barely taken damage. Taeyang fought with desperate skill. The horizon's edge danced between Vryn ships, targeting weapon clusters, trying to find weaknesses. Hana flew like she was born in space, her hands moving faster than thought. But even their best efforts felt like throwing rocks at a mountain. We cannot win this way, Minho said, his voice tight with controlled panic. Taeyang knew he was right. They needed something more, something the Vryn would not expect. On the moon, Dr. Nari worked with Kalith in the Anari colony. The elder Anari sat in meditation, her eyes closed, feeling the battle through sensors. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. I can sense them, she said. The Vryn. Their minds are connected, but the connection is not instant. There is delay. Lag. Nari's mind raced. How much lag? Between ship groups? Perhaps 3 seconds. 3 seconds. It was not much, but it was enough. Nari contacted Wubin immediately. General, we have found their weakness. The hive mind has communication lag. If we separate their fleet, we can exploit it. Wubin understood instantly. He changed tactics. Instead of fighting as one fleet, he divided his forces into small, fast groups. Hit and run. Strike one section of the Vryn fleet, then retreat before reinforcements could arrive. Force them to spread out. The Vryn adapted, but slowly. Their 3-second lag meant human ships could strike and vanish before the hive mind could coordinate a response. The tide began to turn. Not much, but enough to give hope. Then Kalith offered humanity a terrible gift. She came to the command center herself, her ancient face grave. There is another way. The Anari can link with your fleet. We can give your commanders perfect awareness. They will see the battlefield as we see it. We'll know what the Vryn will do before they do it. Wubin leaned forward. What is the cost? Kalith met his eyes. The Vryn neural weapons will kill us. The connection will expose our minds. We will burn out, one by one. But for the hours we survive, your fleet will be unstoppable. Silence fell. Nari shook her head violently. No. We did not save you, just so you could die for us. Nari, you honored your debt, Kalith said gently. Now, let us honor ours. Taeyang received the message on his ship. He felt sick. They had come to save the Anari, and now the Anari were offering to sacrifice themselves. It felt wrong. But he also knew they were losing. Without help, Earth would fall. He made the hardest decision of his life. Do it. 3,000 Anari entered meditation chambers across the moon colony. They linked their minds to the fleet's command network. Suddenly, every captain, every pilot, every gunner felt the change. They could sense the Vryn fleet as the Anari sensed it. Every ship, every weapon, every intention. The battle transformed. Human ships moved with impossible precision. Every shot hit. Every maneuver was perfect. The Vryn could not adapt because humanity was always one step ahead. Vryn ships began dying. Dozens, then hundreds. The hive mind reeled, unable to counter an enemy that anticipated its every move. But the cost was terrible. The Ahnari began dying. Kalith had been right. The Vryn neural weapons burned through their minds like fire through paper. Every time a Vryn weapon fired, it sent feedback through the neural link. The Anari absorbed that feedback, protecting human minds, but destroying their own. On the moon, Nari watched the Anari die. They fell one by one, their minds consumed. She wept as she held them. These gentle beings, who had given humanity everything. The battle raged for 6 hours. In that time, the combined fleet destroyed 3,000 Vryn ships. An impossible victory. But 3,000 Anari died to make it happen. When only 300 Anari remained, Taeyang could not bear it anymore. Break the link. Retreat. We have done enough, Wubin agreed. The fleet pulled back toward Earth's moon. The Vryn, following but cautious now. They had lost nearly a third of their forces. For the first time, the hive mind felt something like doubt. The surviving Anari were pulled from their meditation chambers. Most could barely stand. Kalith was alive, but weak. Rael survived, though he wept for the friends he had lost. Nari held them both, her heart breaking. I am so sorry, she whispered. Kalith managed a smile. Do not be. We chose this, and we would choose it again. The Allied fleet regrouped near the moon. They had 600 ships left. The Vryn still had 7,000. The math was brutal. They had bought time, but not victory. In the command center, Wubin stared at tactical displays. We cannot win. Even with Anari help, we are too outnumbered. President Sola stood beside him, her face lined with exhaustion. Then we make our last stand here. At Earth. We do not surrender. Taeyang sat on his damaged bridge, looking at casualty reports. 1,500 more dead. Good people who had believed in doing the right thing. He thought about giving the order to retreat, to scatter the fleet, and hope some survived. Then Hana spoke, her voice strange. Sir, sensors are detecting something. What? Wormholes. Hundreds of them. Opening all around the system. Taeyang looked at his screens and felt his heart stop. Energy signatures filled space. Massive wormholes tearing open like wounds in reality. Something was coming. Something big. Identify, he ordered. The answer came back and changed everything. Sir, they are ships. 15,000 of them. Species we have never seen. They are broadcasting on all frequencies. The message is the same in 34 languages. Taeyang listened to the broadcast and felt tears sting his eyes. The Anari called. We answer. The debt is ours. The cavalry had arrived. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Species that humanity had never heard of. Civilizations that had grown in isolation for thousands of years. But all of them remembered the Anari. All of them had received gifts long ago. And all of them had heard Dr. Nari's call. The first through the wormholes were the Velish, a species of crystalline beings who flew ships that looked like living diamonds. Behind them came the Gorath, massive armored creatures in heavy warships. Then the Lumari, beings of pure energy and vessels that glowed like stars. 15,000 ships filled the space around Earth. Some were advanced beyond anything humanity could build. Others were primitive, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. But they all had one thing in common. They had come to honor a debt. The lead Velish ship broadcast on all frequencies. 50,000 years ago, the Anari found our world. We were blind, living in darkness. They gave us the gift of light perception. We owe them everything. President Sola responded, her voice shaking with emotion. They are here. 300 survivors. They sacrificed themselves to save us. A long silence followed. Then, the Velish captain spoke again. Then we will honor their sacrifice. The Vryn have made a grave mistake. They thought the Anari were alone. They were wrong. The combined fleet now numbered over 17,000 ships. The Vryn, who had seemed unstoppable, suddenly faced an enemy that outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. General Wubin stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. He had spent his whole life fighting impossible odds. Now, for the first time, the odds were in their favor. All ships, he broadcast. Form up. We end this now. The fleet advanced. Humanity and 34 species moving as one. The Vryn, for the first time in their existence, hesitated. Their hive mind calculated the odds and found them unfavorable, but they could not retreat. The Hive Queen demanded the Anari. Nothing else mattered. The battle began. This time, it was not even close. The Vryn were surrounded, outnumbered, and facing technologies they had never encountered. The Velish ships fired beams of pure light that cut through Vryn bio-armor like paper. The Gorath ships simply rammed Vryn vessels, their heavy hulls crushing the enemy. Humanity fought with savage efficiency. Taeyang led his squadron into the heart of the Vryn formation, targeting command ships. Hana flew like a demon, her fighter weaving between capital ships to destroy weapon clusters. Minho coordinated strikes with precision that would have been impossible days before. The Vryn fleet began to crumble. Their perfect coordination shattered under the assault. Ships turned on each other as the hive mind fractured under stress. The 3-second communication lag became a fatal weakness when facing so many enemies from so many directions. In 6 hours, the Vryn lost 4,000 ships. Their formation collapsed entirely. For the first time in their history, the hive mind felt fear. Taeyang received intelligence from Minho. The Vryn command ship had been located. A massive biomechanical horror at the center of their fleet, housing the regional queen mind that controlled all operations. That is our target, Taeyang said. We kill the queen, the fleet dies with her. He assembled a strike force, 20 ships, including the Horizon's Edge. They punched through the Vryn lines, taking heavy fire but refusing to stop. 3 ships died in the assault, then 5 more. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of Earth's largest carrier. Its hull pulsed with organic life, covered in what looked like veins and eyes. It was grotesque and horrifying, a monument to everything the Vryn represented. All weapons, fire. The strike force unleashed everything. Nuclear missiles, plasma torpedoes, railgun rounds. The Queen ship's shields collapsed, and its hull began to rupture. But it fought back, its weapons tearing apart 2 more human ships. Taeyang made a decision. Hana, ram it. She looked at him, her young face pale. Sir, set autopilot. Everyone to escape pods. We are going to put this ship right down their throat. The crew evacuated. Taeyang was the last to leave, programming the Horizon's Edge for a collision course. He looked at his bridge one last time, this place where he had made so many hard choices. Then he ran. The escape pod launched seconds before impact. The Horizon's Edge, traveling at full thrust, struck the Queen ship dead center. The fusion reactor breached on impact, and the resulting explosion tore the Queen ship apart. Across the battlefield, every Vryn ship shuddered. The hive mind screamed in digital agony as the Queen mind died. Then, one by one, Vryn ships began destroying themselves. Without the Queen to coordinate them, the hive mind fractured completely. Some ships fired on their own allies. Others simply drifted, powerless. In 3 hours, the Vryn fleet was destroyed. 7,000 ships gone. Their empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, ended in a single battle. The Allied fleet regrouped, damaged but victorious. Taeyang floated in his escape pod until a Velish ship picked him up. He sat in their medical bay, staring at nothing, barely able to process what had happened. They had won. Impossibly, incredibly, they had won. 1 week later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. They expected to condemn humanity for starting a war. Instead, they faced something they had never anticipated. 35 species standing together, united by an ancient debt. President Sola stood before the council, representing humanity and the Debt Keepers Alliance, as they now called themselves. She spoke calmly, but with steel in her voice. You called us insignificant. You called us reckless. You said we would bring disaster. But we kept a 50,000-year-old promise. We fought impossible odds because it was right. And we showed you what happens when honor matters more than fear. The council had no response. They could not condemn an alliance that had just destroyed the Vryn, a threat the council had been too afraid to face. Instead, they offered full council membership to all 35 species, with voting rights and representation. The Debt Keepers Alliance accepted, but on their own terms. They would join the council, but would maintain their independence. They would defend each other, always, based on the principle Kalith had taught them. A debt is sacred. A promise is forever. Months passed. Earth rebuilt. The allied species formed embassies and began trading technologies. Humanity gained access to advanced sciences it would have taken centuries to develop alone. In return, humanity shared its own gifts. Tactical thinking. Adaptive strategies. The warrior's mind the Ahnari had given them. On Earth's moon, a monument was built in the Ahnari colony. It was a simple structure, beautiful in its elegance, listing the names of every Ahnari who had died in the battle. At the base was an inscription in both Proto-Human script and modern Korean. To the Ahnari, who gave us the stars. To the fallen, who gave us tomorrow. The debt is paid. Taeyang stood before the monument on the day it was unveiled. He had retired from the military, his body too old and broken for more fighting. Beside him stood Dr. Nari, who had been named ambassador to the Ahnari. On his other side was Hana, promoted to captain and commanding her own ship now. And standing with them, looking healthier than he had in months, was Rael. The young Ahnari had grown stronger, learning to smile again. He looked at the monument and then at the humans who had saved his people. Was it worth it? He asked quietly. All those lives, all that pain. Taeyang looked at the names carved in stone. He thought about the horizon's edge, gone but not forgotten. He thought about the 1,500 humans who had died, keeping a promise. He thought about Kalith and the Ahnari who had sacrificed themselves. Every life we saved, he said. Every promise we kept. Yes, it was worth it. Nari touched the monument gently. They gave us everything. Language. Fire. The stars themselves. Honoring that debt was not a choice. It was who we are. Above them, ships moved in orbit. Human vessels flying alongside Velish diamonds and Goreth cruisers. 35 species working together. Building something new. Something based not on fear or power, but on trust and honor. The Galactic Council watched nervously. The Debt Keepers Alliance had become a power they could not ignore. Humanity, once dismissed as insignificant, now stood at the center of a coalition that spanned the galaxy. And across that galaxy, civilizations whispered a new story. The story of the species that kept a 50,000-year-old promise. The species that faced annihilation rather than abandon those who needed them. The species that showed the galaxy what it meant to truly honor a debt. Humanity had settled an ancient debt. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. Taeyong stood in the garden on the lunar colony, watching Earth rise over the horizon. He thought about his grandfather, who had taught him that a promise was sacred. He wished the old man could see what that lesson had built. "We did it," he said softly. And somewhere in the monument behind him, carved in stone and memory, 5,700 names stood testament to a simple truth. A debt is a debt, and humans always pay what they owe.